Hello and welcome to my card tutorial video using some of the new products from the January to March 2026 mini catalog from Stampin' Up. Some of these products are from the Made with Love suite, and if you have the mini catalog, it's page 30 and 31. If you want just the bundle with the stamp set and dies, that is called the Endless Love bundle, but the entire suite is called Made with Love. I did get this whole suite, so I'll eventually be sharing more of the products than what I'm using today, but let's go through what I'm going to use on this card today. So for our card today, I am using the Endless Love bundle, the stamp set and dies. I'm only using this word love and the today and always sentiments from it. And then out of the die set, I'm using the big heart. Let me show you, that's this right here. It is a stitched heart. It's a really nice size, and that's going to be a part of our main focal image. And then for the paper that I'm using from the paper pack, I'm using the one with the pink and red stripes. That is Flirty Flamingo in Real Red. And then this one with the 3 different colors of hearts. And on the opposite sides, just so you can see what's opposite of that, there's a red dot and some XOXO, some little hearts in about 3 different colors. So let's get started. So I'm going to start with a piece of Flirty Flamingo cardstock. This is cut to 3 15/16 by 5 3/16, and I'm going to be embossing that with the Timeless Plaid embossing folder. This is one of my favorite embossing folders that we have. I use this on so many projects, and I find that for me, when I'm using a new suite, some new products for the first time, if I'm not really sure what I want to do with it, I tend to kind of grab for some of my favorite items, you know, kind of some of those go-to tried and true, maybe a layout or a template that I really like, or, you know, like the embossing folder or some certain techniques that are familiar to me that I know I'm going to like. So I'm going to start by embossing this. I will bring my machine over because we're going to be running a couple other things through that. And if you're not familiar with this, this is the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. You can emboss and die cut with this. For embossing, this is a 3D embossing folder. So I'm setting down plate number 1, and then my embossing folder with my Flirty Flamingo cardstock. And then on top of that will go plate number 4. And then we'll crank it through. And the reveal, get that out of there. And that just gives the cardstock that really fun plaid texture. Okay, let's move this out of the way. And we still need plate number 1. We're going to do some die cutting now. When we're die cutting with this machine, we need that first base plate, number 2, which is a real thin kind of a shim, and then 2 of the number 3 cutting plates. So I'll put one down, put my designer series paper down with my die on top of it. And if I feel like my die is going to shift around, I like to use some something like Post-it tape, some low tack tape. I think we'll be okay on this one though, so I'm going to just set my second number 3 plate on top, kind of press it down a little bit so things don't shift, and start cranking that through. And there's that heart. Really fun with that stitching detail around the outside. And then the last thing I'm going to die cut is just for my sentiment. I am using the deckled rectangle. This is the second from the smallest size, and I'm just going to put it on some white cardstock, or cut that out of white cardstock. All right, and there's our little deckled rectangle for our sentiment. I'm going to move this out of the way because we're done with the machine. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is a little bit of ink splattering. So I did bring some paper in just to protect my work surface, and I'm going to do this now and give it a chance to dry while we work on the rest. For ink splattering, you can do this a lot of different ways. I like to use this Dina Wakley Media Gloss Spray in white. It's a glossy acrylic spray, and you just give it a shake. I shook it before we started, but you can hear that ball in there. Just make sure you shake it up real well. And then how I like to use it so that I don't get a ton of spray, because you can use the nozzle, of course, and spray it where you want it. I like just some, you know, kind of controlled drops, I guess. So you can see how I did this on our sample. I did a few droplets up here on this corner and then kind of the bottom right. So that's kind of my go-to when I'm working on a new design or anything like that. I kind of like to focus kind of the interest or embellishments in the top left and bottom right. So to kind of be able to control my little speckles and dots and droplets, I take the lid off, and there is some of that paint on the tube from inside the spray, and I'll hold it over my cardstock and just tap here on the lid, and that'll, you know, cause the drops to fall onto the cardstock. There we go. I'm kind of liking that. And you can do as much or as little as you want. I try to not go overboard because I don't, you know, I want it, like I said, a little bit controlled so it doesn't look like just, you know, a big sneeze all over. There was some thought put into it. So I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to just move this to the side and let it dry while we work on a couple other things. So let's work on our sentiment next. I'm bringing in that little piece of white cardstock. And for this sentiment, I'm going to use the word love, like I showed you out of the stamp set. And I didn't even clean it in between because I'm using the same color. I am going to use Flirty Flamingo ink pad on that. That'll match our cardstock we just splattered. So I'm going to ink that up. Looks pretty good. And then I'm just going to center it the best I can. Okay. And as these dry, they dry pretty quick because these are dye inks. I tend to find that they do lighten up a little bit and they kind of even out. It has a little bit of a mottled look. It won't really stay, it'll still have a little bit of that, but it does tend to kind of even out, you know, as it dries. And then the next little detail I'm going to do for our sentiment is I'm going to use that Today and Always stamp and stamp that actually over the top of the word love. And I really like, for my black ink, I use this VersaFine Onyx Black. I find that it really gives some nice crisp detail when I'm stamping words. So get that inked up. And then I'm just going to kind of go a little more toward the bottom, but there we go. Overlap those two like that. So there's our sentiment for the front. Okay. And now we can start assembling and doing some embellishing for our card. So I am going to use a tape runner to put this striped paper directly onto my card base. This is an A2 size card, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 will be the finished size. It's 11 inch, 4 1/4 by 11 inch scored at 5 1/2. And just put a little tape runner around. This striped piece is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I wanted just a tiny little white border showing around it, so made that pretty small. And then we can go ahead and tape this layer on. Okay, and then off camera, I did put some dimensionals onto the back of our 2 die cut pieces here. So we're gonna stick this heart close to the center, as close to the center as we can. And then before I put our sentiment on, I am going to make a bow out of my white twine. So I'll show you how I do that. I've showed this on other videos, but in case you either want to see it again or miss that. So I take my piece of twine, I use 3 fingers, and I always make sure I have a little bit of a tail hanging down, and I wrap the long piece of the twine around my fingers as many times as I want there to be loops. So if I want 2 loops on each side, that's how many times I wrap it. If I want a big bow with lots and lots of loops, I would need a much longer string and just keep wrapping. So I'm going to stop at 2 and pull my middle finger out. So it's now just around my ring finger and my pointer finger. I'm going to take that tail that I was wrapping and put it all the way through around both front and back of the loop and bring it around to the front now and hold it kind of with my thumb. And then I'm going to pull that first tail that was hanging down around here to the front. So now I have both tails here, and then that's what I tie into just a single knot. So get this, oh, if I can, get it pulled around here. And I'm still hanging on to everything pretty tight. If you start to pull your fingers out too soon, you're going to lose the whole thing and have to start over. And then just tighten those tails into a knot in the middle and slip them off your finger. And then you can do a little bit of adjusting if you need to. But that's, you know, kind of how I do my bows for my cards. And I'm going to have that sticking kind of right under the corner of our sentiment, probably right about there. I am going to put a glue dot behind that just to hold it in place. Let's see, I think that was right about there. Again, I have my dimensionals on the back of our sentiment already. Pull part of this up so it's not hiding back there. There we go. All right, and then you can just trim the tails to however long you want. The last little embellishment I'm going to do to this is with that sweet collection that I ordered, you get this loose Valentine's assortment. It doesn't say how many pieces are in here, but there are so many, I'll probably never in my lifetime use all of these unless I do a bunch of shaker cards or something, but they're really cool. I'm not even sure what you call these. They're kind of that almost like a little bit of a soft or rubbery texture. It's not like hard plastic, but anyway, I'm going to pick out some of the white hearts and get them glued onto our card, kind of in the same areas that I did my splatter. Before I start gluing any down, I want to show you there are white, light pink, and darker pink hearts in this. And then there's these little tiny envelopes with a little red heart. And then I thought, well, what are these other little red things? It looks like broken hearts or something. And then when I pulled it out, I realized they're little tiny lips. So cute. Just such a fun little assortment of items here. So, okay, so I have my glue. I'm going to put, let's see, 3 dots here. 1, 2, 3. And I pulled my hearts out. Sometimes I'll grab these little things with a tweezer. Today I'm just using my fingers. Okay. And kind of the same down here. All right. And that is our card using the new Endless Love bundle and Made with Love suite from Stampin' Up. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I do hope that you'll subscribe if you haven't yet, like the video if you liked this, and come back for more next time. I am going to be sharing more from this suite, some more project ideas. So I hope to see you next time, and have a great rest of your day.